Hello and welcome to the Nope Coach podcast. This is episode 338, Quit Instagram with a 9 Grid. I am your host, Suzanne Kohlberg. I'm inviting the fabulous, I had to add a T to it, Deanna Seymour to join me today. And normally I don't say how I know anyone at the beginning. We just dive straight into it. But I met Deanna, anyway, that's a whole long story. We haven't got time for that. But basically, she makes these static 9 grids for Instagram. And part of my strategy that's not a strategy for 2024 is to quit social media, which I have, since done. And people are like, how can you have a business without social media? And what I love about your work, Deanna, and what I'm hoping we'll chat about today is if you suddenly just stop posting, like if you're like, that's it, I'm done, and you leave in a huff, people may come across your Instagram and go, is this person still in business? Are they not? Like they haven't posted in 6 months, and then they'll keep scrolling. Whereas you produce these fabulous static 9 grids, which is basically, in my way of looking at it, like a mini website. Like when you go to someone's website, who are they? What do they do? What do they offer? And then direct people to where you are now hanging out. So for anyone listening to this who either is in business and is like, oh, I'm so done with social media, like, woot woot, I hear you, or who is wanting to have something on social media but doesn't want to start down that self-sabotage sinkhole of scrolling your life away, I think this will be the episode for you. So Deanna, how did you get into making these? I've never actually asked you this before.
Well, I actually met a girl named Kristen. Her business is called Going Ultraviolet when I did a series called F That, Breaking the Rules of Online Business. But the theme of that certain little series, it was like a private podcast series, was about breaking the rules of social media. And so she had done it. And I was like, say what now? This sounds intriguing to me because I just feel like you get in that loop where you're like, okay, what am I going to post this month? And you just, I tried everything, like little pillars, or telling myself, okay, on Monday I'll post like a funny meme, and then on Tuesdays I'll post a tip or whatever. Okay, I'll post.
Can we just pause there for a moment? Because I just got to unpack this. Like, if this is your business, I am no means meaning to sound like I'm making fun, but how many times have we heard, as you said, Mondays, it's the hint and tip. Tuesdays, it's the meme. Wednesdays, it's the ask an inspiring question. Thursdays, it's the, and the thing is, it's so, it drives me crazy because I maybe it's just my personality. Like to me, social media is supposed to be social, fun, connected, real time. If I'm brainstorming a month's worth of questions to pre-schedule, like I remember this lady once I was chatting with, and she's like, "Oh, one day I'm like, why do I get so many notifications?" Then I go and look and go, "Oh, my question's gone live," and then people are answering it. It's like, why the fuck are you asking a question if you don't want answers to? Like, isn't that the whole definition of a bait and switch? Like it just drives me mad. Anyway, sorry to interrupt you.
Well, no, I had fallen into that trap, and I the way I knew was because my husband talked to me at dinner one night about a post, and I was like, "What?" Because I had pre-scheduled it, weeks before, just to like check it off my list. And so I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "The thing you posted today," and I was like, "Oh, I wrote that weeks." I was like, "What did I even say? What was I thinking? What was I doing?" And I thought, I'm not really into this. Like I just had one foot in, one foot out. And sometimes you feel inspired, but then maybe you don't feel inspired. And as a, ADHD person, entrepreneur, like sometimes I go like I post all the time, and then other times I'm burnt out and I don't want to post at all. And like you said, this is a way to just put up a set of posts so that nobody thinks that you're out of business. Like you are just calling it out and you're like, hey, here's me. Like I always recommend that in post one, people say, I'm over it, like, or whatever reason it is. I want to concentrate on this. I'm growing my YouTube channel, like find me over there or whatever. But read through these few posts to find out more about me and what I'm about. And I think right now, especially in 2024, lots of people are over social media. So I almost feel like starting off with that, people are instantly like, oh, who is this rebel who's like not playing the algorithm game? And so I think I sort of feel like people read even more. They're like more curious to be like, what is this person doing? And then they read through your posts and find out, all your offers. Like, obviously you have this podcast, which is an amazing resource for people. And if you were just posting random pillars, Like if you posted about your podcast and then you had to cycle through everything else, someone might totally miss that you have this podcast. If you have a fixed grid and it's, post number 4, they're not going to miss it. It's right there front and center all the time for everyone who comes to your page, which is one thing I love about it too.
And that's the other thing that we didn't touch on earlier. But, and once again, if this is your business or if your business model, if this works for you, like don't go change it. You do you, something I live by. But
Totally.
how often people just recycle it? They're like, oh, that post has done well, so I'm going to schedule it every month, for the next 6 months or whatever the maximum, thing is. And it just seems to me like, I don't know, redundant.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, why recycle it? Why can't it just like live there and everybody can come see it? It doesn't, that's because we're just following the rules, right? We're like, oh, we have to post. And I think too, like you were saying, if this works for you and you're like happy and you love Instagram and you're like having fun on Instagram, then I say, yeah, keep doing it. But if you're kind of in the boat where you're like trying to figure out shortcuts or trying to figure out how you can repurpose stuff really easily or get ChatGPT to write all your posts, like you kind of have that one foot out the door. And that's what I feel like the 9 grid or whatever, you could make it a 12 grid. I always joke that I'm extra because mine's a little extra long, but like putting up these static posts gets you away from feeling like you have to do it.
And I think that's the piece. I love your business is all about big fun content. You have a podcast called that, but is it fun for you? Some people love posting, sharing stories, engaging, highlighting, DMing. Like if that's your jam, don't change it. And I'm not poo-pooing on that. Like have at it. But for those of us who are like, I don't know, it makes me want to die inside. Like to me, social media is such a time suck. And back on the days when I used to do DMs and stuff, it never really ever. I'd have to sit really and contemplate it. For me, if it ever converted to a sale, mostly it was people who wanted to just have a chit chat or were like the seagulls. They wanted to come and scramble and grab all the free stuff. Like, let's get the chips. And then they would just shit and leave. So it wasn't, if it's not working for you, for your personality style, for your business style, or like, if I'm teaching and espousing and living boundaries, but I'm being boundaryless Wild West on the Insta, like for my business model and type, it doesn't make sense. But if your business model is like maybe social media growth or, growing your list through DMs or something, of course, you're going to be doing what you do. So like, does it make sense for you? Because whenever in business, it is like the wild, wild west. But a website person's going to tell you need a website. An Instagram person's going to tell you need Instagram. So like what lights you up? What is fun for you? It's kind of like any sort of thing. Like gardening to me is like my worst nightmare. And this morning I was like, man, Suze, you really got to weed. Like there's a situation happening. My sister does that for fun.
I know my mother-in-law does too. I'm like, what do you like? She comes and visits and I'm like, yeah, go garden with the kids. That's really fun. You guys have fun doing that. Yeah.
And I think that's part of the stuff that gets lost in business sometimes. We get into business, I hope, for many of us, usually to escape the 9 to 5, but then we end up working 24/7 and to do what we love, but then we don't love marketing and sales, many of us, unless our business is that. But then we think we trap ourselves into these things that maybe aren't necessarily the only way or the aligned way for us to do it.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's interesting that you were saying do what's fun for you, because I think for me, I still really like Instagram. So what I post is, well, if I don't want to be a liar, the last quarter I tested out like not even really doing reels, but then I was also sort of a liar because I posted some audiograms as reels for a little podcast series I did. So I'm all over the place. But my grid is like there. And I always know it's there and it's doing what it needs to do, which like you said is like a mini website telling everybody exactly what I do. I'm not shy about like what I'm selling. I'm not shy about free resources I have, or I feel like there's a square where I brag about how much people love my emails and I'm like, get on my list. Like it's freeing because you're like, these are my only ones I'm putting up. So let's not fake it. Like, here's the stuff I have. But then when I want to put a story up or, I feel like I kind of have some Instagram friends. And so I'll send DMs, like not so much as like marketing, but just staying connected with my like business friends who I feel like I just keep in touch with. I mean, today we were talking about our kids in our DMs, you know, like me and a business friend talking about how they don't want to go to school because it's like almost when it gets closer to the end of the year, kids don't want to go to school and you have to like drag them to school. So we were like commiserating about that. So I love now Instagram is more fun for me because I don't have to just crank out posts. Like that's taken care of. And if I want to post a reel, if I feel sassy about something, I can, but it doesn't, like you said, look like, oh, she hasn't posted in months. Like, yeah, I haven't. And you just read it and you know why. And I get to post whenever I want instead of feeling like I have to.
That's
So,
the other thing
and
too that I like, as you said, if you want social, then it sounds like you're using social media for its original intended purpose, to be social. And when people say like, I DM my friends or my business friends or my connections all the time, usually memes, gifs, reels, fun stuff, or as you said,
Mhm.
about the kids or whatever, but I don't do business that way. Like if someone has a business proposal or a question or whatever, then send me an email.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, if it frees you up, and you could do so, like, I don't know if you, because I know you're not much of a Facebook user. See, I was always Facebook and then Instagram because everyone said to go there. And then some people the other way around. I basically took your 9 grid concept posts and put them on Facebook in the same kind of order. Obviously, some of them weren't
Mhm.
relevant, like there's no grid or whatever.
Yeah.
But my Facebook, my business Facebook now looks exactly like that. And then it's interesting, on business Facebook, you have the option to remove the ability to DM. Like nobody can DM me. So what people were doing was DMing my personal page, then commenting on my personal post saying, check your others folder. Like I need to be told to do that. Thank you very much. So now I
My
have
gosh.
on my personal profile, this is my personal profile. If you want to contact me about business, and then I've got my business contact page and I've actually pinned that. So I know people
Yeah.
won't read it or whatever and they have their own agenda and they copy paste the same spam shit to 100 other people. But
Hmm.
like you, unless you direct people in some way, then they've got no hope of knowing. And if they're not going to take the time to read that, then we're not going to work together well anyway. So
True. Yeah. I mean, I've worked with people on static 9 grids. It's interesting too because like I feel like for yours it was much more like I don't check DMs, like go to YouTube, contact me on the contact page. I had a yoga studio owner who was also big on YouTube and was like, I don't need to be here. But the funny thing too is that people do go and like look for you on Instagram. So I do feel like I won't say it's like a red flag to people like, oh, they don't have an Instagram, but I almost feel like it's nice to sort of plant that flag and be there looking like professional and saying, and it's like nice to find those people and say, go to my YouTube. Like it's just a place to set up shop to say, here's where I'm gonna be. Um,
And also,
I just
most
feel like, yeah.
people, if you are on a summit or a presentation or people hear you as a guest on a podcast, what they tend to do is go look up your socials before they go
Mhm.
to your website. So if you have this static 9 grid there, or if you're part of a summit or whatever, then they can see, oh, yeah, she does have a business, and they can read through it. And I don't know, like people are much more likely from my experience, and I'm happy to be corrected. If you guys listening have a different experience, comment, let me know. But I think it's less pressure felt to go to check someone's socials as opposed to their website where pop-ups might happen or they're trying to get you onto their list or get my freebie. And it's like, oh, it's so much pressure. Whereas
Yeah.
socials, you can just kind of have a little bit of a scroll and then, you know, move about your day.
Well, and like you were saying too, like when people, most people, and again, I hang out mostly on Instagram, so this could also be just because that's where I am. But I feel like summits and when you're a guest on someone's podcast, like they usually tag you, in my experience, on Instagram stories. So I still get a lot of followers, even though I'm pretty much saying, like, hey, here's my static grid. I don't post that much. But I say follow along for random reels, maybe, or whatever. And they still push follow, which doesn't really matter because I'm not doing a ton of stuff. But I'm hoping also maybe they click the link in my bio. Maybe they do join my email, or wherever they land, at least they had somewhere to go. Because if I just didn't have Instagram and I was in that summit, then I just would, my picture would be on the graphic, but they wouldn't be able to tag me. You know what I mean? Like I
Exactly.
think
And you can
they
add
would
it, as
still
you said,
share
you can
it.
still use your stories if you so choose to. And people do still find you that way. Like you did my 9 grid, which went live last month, and then you shared it to your list, and then a few people come. So
Mhm.
if you do join my list, one of the first emails you'll get from me is basically, how did you find me? And I really do love to know. And I only get 1 in 10 people responding to that, which I thought wasn't many. But then I was chatting with you and some other business people this morning. They're like, Suze, that's actually big response rate for your first email. So it's all it's all relative.
Yeah.
But quite a few people responded and said Deanna's message or Deanna's email. So it gives you a way to know where people come from. So
Totally.
this has been fabulous. So if people are listening to this, Deanna, and they're like, oh my goodness, I want a 9 grid and I don't even know where to start, let people know, because I know you do have resources talking through this. Deanna's not like, you have to pay me. She has, this is what I recommend for free. It was either in a podcast episode or it's literally on your website. Somewhere you have a breakdown of recommended, which I looked at and thought, that's nice. Can you do it for me? So let people know where they can find that, where they can find you if they like, yes, do this, please.
Yeah. If you go to deannaseymour.com, that has all the things. Obviously, that's just my website. And I think I'm like under work with me. You know, if you click around to the Static 9 grid, there's also that page, but there's also a blog post listed that's pretty extensive about it. But also, if you Google Static 9 grid, I think I come up pretty high in the ranks. So you could also just do that.
That's pretty cool. And if you want to know how to spell Deanna Seymour for her website, look at the episode title of this episode, because it's the Quit Instagram with a 9 grid with Deanna Seymour. The spelling is there because, you know, sometimes people are like, how do I spell Kohlberg or whatever? And I'm thinking, well, usually, I imagine yours is similar. You can kind of be off base and Google's pretty smart, but you know, just look at the episode title. The spelling's right there.
Yeah, for sure.
Provided I have it correct. Sometimes I do have things wrong. So if it ever is wrong, feel free to send me an email. Thank you so much for joining me, Deanna. Thank you everyone for tuning in. We'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.